Okay. Hi, I'm Laura with Badger Run, and this is our next video in our distance learning series. And today I'm going to talk to you about Tory. Tory's one of our educational ambassador birds here at Badger Run, and she's a Peregrine Falcon. Tory came into us in the summer of 2019. She was born in 2000. 19 is actually their normal lifespan in the wild. So being in captivity, that always extends their lifetime. Free room service and free medical care. But Tory was retired to us in 2019 from her falconer. So this is a bird that was purpose-bred in 2000 for falconry and has been a working bird most of her life. She was used as a mitigation falcon. So have you guys ever heard of a mitigation falcon? Well, this is where falconers use their falcons or their hawks, and what they use them for is to patrol fields, vineyards, airports to keep the pest birds out. So starlings in agricultural fields, ducks and geese in airports. So in her case, she was patrolling a blueberry field in 2018, and she hit a sprinkler head with her wing. Now, if she'll turn properly, see this wing here, she fractured it hitting that sprinkler head, and there's just a few little feathers out of place right here on her wing. They don't lay flat, and that is called the alula, A-L-U-L-A, and that is very important for birds in takeoff and landings, but in falcons, it's particularly important for their maneuverability in the air. So her falconer was afraid by her having lost her maneuverability in flight, she wouldn't be able to evade any eagles that might try to attack her in midair when she was working. So he retired to us summer of 2019, and now she's an education bird and doing a great job. Now, I said she's a falcon, so why do I know she's a falcon and not a hawk? Well, there's actually 4 physical characteristics that set falcons apart from hawks, and they're pretty easy to see, at least 2 of them. The first thing is you'll notice she has a very narrow, pointy wing. Can you spread those out? Thank you. Falcons like to hunt by tucking and diving on things. They don't glide and soar up in the air looking for their prey. They like to dive on things, and they look at diving at a high rate of speed. Now, Peregrine Falcon is one of the fastest of the falcons. In fact, they are the fastest falcon. They have a record in a stoop dive, diving down on prey, of 240 miles per hour. Now, that's the record. 200 is more the average. So what they want to do is have very maneuverable bodies. So they depend on those narrow, pointy wings to be fast and maneuverable. They're little feathered fighter jets. So that's the first tell, is the narrow, pointy wings. Now the second are malar stripes. Those are going to be dark stripes of some fashion on a falcon's face. And in her case, they look like a giant Fu Manchu mustache, no biting, on each side of her face. These work to diminish glare. Just like a football player or a baseball player will have eye black on, works the same way for these birds. Remember I said these birds all dive, falcons dive at a high rate of speed, some faster than others, but big jutting eyebrow bone like an eagle or a hawk would have is not aerodynamic. So to be aerodynamic, these birds have evolved to have the eye black instead of the supraorbital ridge that sticks out real big. Now those are the 2 easiest ones to tell on a falcon. The other 2 characteristics are a cone in their nasal passage, called a nasal tubercle, and a notch in their beak, called a tomial tooth. Now we're going to try and focus in on this where you can see these. So in the nasal passage, there's a little cone that fits down in her nasal passage. And what this does is it slows the air coming into the nasal passage where she can breathe normally at those high rates of speed. All falcons have these nasal tubercles. But it does slow the wind down or the air down, because if they didn't have those, they'd be hurtling through the air at 200 miles an hour and try to inhale, it'd be like hitting a wall of air. So this allows them to breathe normally. Now the tomial tooth, again, they like to dive on things from above. Sometimes out of the air, the smaller falcons will take things on the ground. The tomial tooth allows them to break the necks of their prey. So if this bird would say hit a pigeon at 200 miles an hour out of the air, you would assume it's going to be dead from impact. But on the off chance their prey isn't dead, what they can do is put this tomial tooth of their beak behind back the neck of their prey, and they break the neck. So if you look very closely at her beak, you'll see there's a notch that comes down from the top of her beak, and it fits into a groove at the bottom of her beak. And that is called a tomial tooth, and only falcons have this. So 4 easy ways to tell physically it's a falcon. Narrow pointy wings, malar stripes on the face, nasal tubercles in the nose, and a tomial tooth on the beak. Now, peregrine falcons were almost extinct in this country by 1972. And it was due to a pesticide being used called DDT. It was used in agricultural fields, also used in mosquito foggers, sprayed liberally. What happens in the case of DDT, when it gets in the body, and it gets in human bodies too, it doesn't break down. It essentially gets stored up in the fat. And once it builds up enough, in the case of birds, what happens, their eggshells, that they lay their eggs, the eggshells become very, very thin, and the eggs get crushed. So you don't have any baby birds happening. Now, how did these birds of prey get the DDT in their systems? Well, it was affecting 4 birds of prey particularly: bald eagles, osprey, peregrine falcons, and one other bird. I'm sorry, it's not a bird of prey, brown pelicans. Brown pelicans, bald eagles, and osprey eat a lot of fish. In fact, almost exclusively fish in some cases. What was happening, the DDT in the agricultural fields was getting into the water as runoff and contaminating all the fish. So those 3 birds I mentioned that eat fish, pelicans, eagles, and osprey, they were consuming these fish. And they were building up DDT in their bodies as well. Now, in the case of the peregrine falcons, this is a bird that eats 99% other birds. So she was getting it in their, or peregrines were getting it in their systems by eating smaller birds that ate a lot of contaminated insects. And they would then ingest the DDT by eating those birds. So eventually it just kept building up, building up, and building up. And like I said, no baby birds were happening. So even by 1975, having DDT off the market for 3 years really was not helping these birds with a comeback. They were still struggling. So in 1975, the Endangered Species Act came into being, and that really helped flip the switch on saving these birds. This allowed the conservationists and falconers who were already concerned about these animals to start working with state and federal agencies and the monies from those agencies, and they all got together and saved these birds. So they brought a bunch of these falcons into captivity to breed them DDT free. And they released about 6,000 uncontaminated peregrine falcons back into the wild. The falconers could teach these birds to hunt, so they got their hunting skills. By 1999, this bird was actually removed from the endangered species list. It had made that big a comeback. Now, one other thing to note on her that I left out earlier, do you see this long center toe? It's abnormally long. This is indicative of a bird that eats a lot of other birds. And like I said, she eats 99% bird. You'll see it in other falcons. You will also see it in Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks that eat a lot of other birds. And it's perfect for reaching up and under the feathers and snagging another bird right out of the air. So thanks for joining us for this video. Look for more in the series. We're going to keep posting them. Take care.